everybody. Welcome. Thank you. We are going to go ahead and get started. And thank you all for being here. First off, I'm here with Every Dog, a nonprofit in Austin, Texas, dedicated to making sure that everybody has the resources that they need for behavior and training. Thank you for everybody who donated today. If you're interested in donating, you can go to everydogaustin.org/donate. Just some quick reminders for today. Please keep yourself muted at all times and save all questions for the end, but you can go ahead and place those questions in the chat box as we go so you don't forget. The webinar is being recorded and we will send that out to all of the participants in the next couple days. And I would like to kick it off to the speakers to introduce themselves. And thank you guys so much.
Oh, I was going to say you can start, Erica.
We're Lynette and Erica with South Austin Dog Center. We opened South Austin Dog Center in 2018, and we've been working with dogs with a lot of fear issues and aggression, and a lot of it stems from trauma, which is how we came to decide on what we were going to talk about today. I got into dog training when I adopted a dog who had some issues, and then she got me going to the animal shelter several times a week and just learning about handling dogs who were having a difficult time there. And it's all kind of spun off from there. And here we are today. Thanks for being here.
Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Lynette. And yeah, everything that Erica just said, and I say that we go ahead and jump right into it. So welcome. This webinar is called Rebuilding Trust, Helping Dogs Heal from Trauma. We've dealt with quite a number of trauma, not even just the dogs. But trust would be one of the big things that's lost with dogs who are experiencing trauma. So hopefully what we're going to go through today is kind of helping dogs understand and rebuild that type of trust. So why do we need to understand trauma anyways? Well, it impacts all dogs, all ages, all breeds, and all backgrounds. You can make a huge difference even just by making some small changes, and healing is possible. We call it healing, not necessarily recovery. Sorry, I have to move my thing. With understanding, patience, and comfort. So we're going to start off here. Eric and I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about Atlas. Atlas came to us at 5.5 months old. He was adopted as a puppy when he was 8 weeks old, and the previous owners, through no fault of their own, received some pretty bad training advice. As a result, Atlas developed some pretty severe resource guarding and gave little to no warning signals. By the time he was 5.5 months old, he had bitten pretty much everybody in the house. After they came to us and we had some discussions, they decided to relinquish Atlas, and so he came to us as a foster dog and, well, never left. But those 3 months of inappropriate training required another 6 months with the right help and support for his more serious behavior issues to subside, and his healing remains ongoing. So today, we're going to dispel some common myths about trauma. We're going to talk about what trauma is and what it isn't, its impacts on emotions and behaviors, the science behind comfort and trust-building activities, practical tools to support healing, and recognizing when to seek professional help. So our common myths. and we're going to talk about our myths versus our reality. Probably the number one is people believe that a fear response means that the dog was abused at some point in the past. That's not necessarily accurate. Trauma has many causes, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. People also believe that dogs will just eventually get over it and they can be cured. Trauma doesn't resolve on its own. There may always be triggers, and healing is a process. It very much is like therapy. People will also think that a traumatic event will define a dog's personality. Now, it can shape behavior, but it doesn't determine the dog's personality. They also believe that only rescue dogs are traumatized, and any dog, any breed, any age, in any circumstances can experience trauma, and most will. There's also this misconception that comforting a dog reinforces their fear. On the other hand, comfort actually builds trust and safety. And on the other end of the spectrum, people tend to believe that, oh, well, all I have to do is love the dog and it'll fix it. And while love is essential, it requires more. To help a dog feel safe, we need more than love. So, trauma is defined as a psychological and physiological response to a distressing or overwhelming event that exceeds the individual's ability to cope. So we have our stressful event. This is the individual's perception regardless of the objective facts. A singular or series of events that the individual finds stressful. It's usually out of their control and they can't escape. This leads to them being overwhelmed. They have no ability to cope with what's happening. So this can be because it's outside of their experience. The individual is unable to ease the stress hormones that they're feeling. And in severe cases, they feel like their life is threatened. This leads to our fear and trauma response, which is a neurological response, a physical response, a behavioral response, and the dog can get stuck in a loop, which ultimately leads to the behavior changes that everybody sees. They can be more on edge, hypervigilant. They're not able to settle. There may be physiological or veterinary issues developing, and it just increases the spiral because when we don't feel well, it just keeps going downhill from there. We're more, again, even more on edge because we're afraid a bear is going to jump out and eat us. And remember that trauma does not mean abuse. So what actually then causes trauma in our dogs? Well, sudden life changes, like rehoming, abandonment, loss of a bonded companion, moving and relocation, or divorce. So anything the dog's not quite expecting, that unpredictability. Early life experiences also have a huge impact. There's no prior experiences or lack of socialization. I promise I can speak. Genetic predisposition, malnutrition, illness, or even a sudden separation from their littermates and the dame. Single terrifying events can also cause trauma. These are going to be things like your car accident, long transports, natural disasters, loud noises, and harsh training methods. All it takes is once sometimes. And then maybe one of the bigger ones here is the chronic stress that dogs experience. These are unaddressed medical issues, living in a chaotic environment, again, where there's no routine, no structure, or appropriate stress releases and enrichment. Then we have neglect, where their needs are not being fulfilled. And finally, kind of a small portion of it here, is the actual abuse. And abuse can be emotional, physiological, or psychological. All right, so what's the difference between just a regular fear response and trauma? Fear is temporary. It's a natural thing that a dog goes through. There's a perceived threat, but the decision-making process in their brain can still say, oh, we're okay, and it's resolved once the threat is actually removed. And we can easily, well, fairly easily, counter condition and desensitize a dog to some of the things that they might experience with time and positive associations. Trauma, on the other hand, is persistent. It rewires the emotional and behavioral responses in the dog, and they might actually generalize it to things that are unrelated to the actual stimuli. It affects how the dog perceives the world, even in the absence of immediate threat. So there might be something that's a little bit of a trigger that all of a sudden the dog goes into a PTSD-like response. So what happens here in the brain is we have the amygdala. That is the smoke detector, and it is sounding the alarm, which then makes the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain, not process the information like it should. It's the prefrontal cortex is responsible for your decision making, but when those stress hormones take over, it kind of hijacks it, and then it goes on back to the hippocampus, and the hippocampus is going, "Wow, oh my gosh, we are in big trouble. Sound all the alarms." So basically, when the amygdala says, hey, that there's something burning in the oven, it becomes overreactive and says, you know what, the whole house is burning down and we're all going to die. And all control is giving over to the limbic system. Basically, all of this is to say, at this point, your dog is not thinking. They are running completely on instinct and self-preservation. And a lot of traumatized dogs can get stuck in this survival loop and having trouble learning new behaviors or even performing known behaviors. They tend to be hypervigilant, shut down, or have heightened startled responses. What's even worse is that trauma can actually change the brain chemistry over time. So we already talked about how it affects the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the hippocampus. What happens here is it causes an overactive production of the neurochemicals like cortisol and adrenaline, which ultimately affects other systems. It impacts the neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to rewire itself. So once we're stuck in this loop, we cannot get out. We're basically building a Grand Canyon into being afraid of everything. Of course, it's going to impact memory and learning, so they can't really distinguish the past from the present. It decreases the impulse control since the prefrontal cortex is not thinking and making decisions, and they're unable to regulate their emotions and their impulses. So pretty much, yeah, the brain is hijacked and it takes the rest of the body with it. So dogs that are traumatized have a frayed connection with their environment. They might either be overly attached to something or not attached at all and hypervigilant, again, waiting for those bears. More or less, again, I've said it several times now, but stuck in that survival mode. These dogs are not being bad. They just physically and mentally cannot bring themselves out of it. To make matters worse, trauma causes physiological changes, which are going to be things like IBS, increased heart rate, high blood pressure, stiff and sore muscles, not to mention all the other brain chemicals that are being dumped into the body. It can cause anorexia and or stress eating at different stages, and it can actually shorten your dog's lifespan. So the survival center, which is the fear circuitry, it is what designates the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or fool around responses in our dogs. Again, the dogs aren't thinking. They're not making any sort of logical decisions. It is 100% emotional, and it tends to go in the wrong way. Again, they typically have difficulty relaxing, and they may show avoidance, aggression, hyperactivity, or shut down. And probably the biggest thing here is that they have difficulty trusting with their heightened anxiety. So really quick, it's just a laundry list of all the behavioral manifestations. I have a video here. I want you guys to watch this dog. Notice all of the different responses. See what you think, kind of record it down, just jot it down. And ask yourself, what would you do with this dog? All right. Hopefully you guys have something. Not sure. It's a very, very short little clip. We're going to revisit this dog in a little bit at the end of the comfort section, and you'll see what happens. So trauma, it's an emotional storm of instability and turmoil. It just crashes into the nervous system and overwhelms the dog's ability to cope, connect, and feel safe. They're lost at sea, trying to find their way back. And the hard truth is that trauma does not respond to our cues. Most of the training models are just looking at the behavior itself. It's not really taking into account the emotional context of the dog. Eric and I kind of believe that we really can't keep a dog in a bubble. We can't try to correct these unwanted behavioral manifestations. And a lot of times, some of this stuff can actually be pretty harmful. So to heal from trauma, you need to stabilize the nervous system. The dogs need to learn how to trust, and we need to start activating other brain chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. The sad truth is that no matter how good you are, at some point in your dog's life, they are going to experience a traumatic event. What we need to know is how to support them through it. So this brings me to the framework that I call the islands of stability. It's kind of what guides our decision-making process with the dogs. Each island here is representative an emotional state of the dogs that we need to stabilize in order for them to heal. It's a guide. It's not a step-by-step model. The islands of stability are kind of multi-dimensional. We can hit several islands at the same time, but we will get back to that. It's a visual, flexible framework for understanding trauma in dogs and helping them heal. Like I said, each island represents a core emotional or behavioral need. It helps to identify what's strong, what's missing, and what's unstable in the dog's internal world. It can help guide our decisions in care, training, and behavior support, and it's grounded in current behavioral science and practical application. What I think is really cool is that it's compatible and complements the already existing ethical models, strategies, techniques, and tools, and can actually help you figure out which one might be best to use. So, as far as I'm concerned, we can be our dog's lighthouse and help them get back to solid ground. So where do we start? Well, the first thing that we have to do is ask, what does the dog need? Not what do we want them to do? So you can ask yourself, does your dog know how to settle on their own? Do they engage with you or do they disengage with you often? Can your dog recover? And I want to talk about what I mean by recover here. We don't really recover from trauma. It's an ongoing thing. When I say recover, it means, do we return to a baseline? It's not that the dog is fixed. It's just something just happened. Can we return to the baseline of where we were? And is your dog able to retreat or even enter into whatever it is that might be scary? Do we have that curiosity? If your answer to this is no or not really, then your dog's probably not ready to learn just yet. And so our job is to help create security so that progress becomes possible. And we do this by slowing down, ditching the sit, stop asking them to sit and stop asking them to perform tasks. We're going to offer safe harbors and really try to support our dogs' healing journeys. And that all starts with connection and comfort. So connection can help build trust. It can be interactive, consent-based games and activities. It's engagement on the dog's terms, so we have a sense of agency. And very clear examples are going to be just being there. You don't have to touch the dog. Sometimes you don't even have to talk to the dog. But just being there, being an anchoring presence. And then, of course, playing with your dogs in a way that your dog finds acceptable, not what you think is acceptable, what the dog thinks is acceptable. Cooperative care techniques can actually help out quite a bit with this because it gives the dog agency. Offering comfort, which is what we're really going to zoom in on today. And then, of course, various T-touch techniques. I'm not a practitioner. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but T-touch can really, really help these dogs. So the role of comfort, we're not spoiling the dog. We're not indulging bad behavior. Because these are emotions, we cannot reinforce or correct an emotion. We can validate it by making the thing even scarier, or we can change it. But comfort offers the reassurance and connection the dog needs that they're not alone. I got your back. We're okay. It's going to help regulate the nervous system that calms the amygdala and relieves stress. It encourages feelings of safety. And it teaches dogs that human can provide that security in uncertain situations. So they look to us for guidance. And eventually, we're going to have that emotional healing through our supportive interactions. This is the cool part. This is the science of comfort. All right. So when we have stress, we have increased cortisol and adrenaline production levels, which heightens our alertness, overactivates the amygdala, and reduces our thinking capacity. And then we have our behavioral reactions that are generally considered unacceptable in the human world. This is going to be your avoidance, aggression, listlessness, and reactivity. What comfort does is it actually lowers those cortisol levels and stimulates oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone in the body. Physical touch, soothing voices, or a calm presence can also help reduce the stress. And it fosters those positive associations we're looking for, reducing fear responses over time. So even just those little actions, meeting the dog where they are, offering comfort that respects the dog's boundaries, which are going to be things like being present without forcing the interaction, using calm, reassuring voices if you do decide to talk to the dog, offering choice and agency to let the dog approach when they're ready instead of trying to coerce them, come get the treat. We can also give them familiar items like a blanket or a toy that they're overly fond of. And it's going to look different for every dog. Some dogs are really, really going to enjoy the cuddling and the T-touch. Other dogs are going to say, hey, why don't we play a game for a little bit? And play therapy has quite a bit to do. Still, other dogs might respond better to helper dogs where they feel safer connecting with something of their own species as opposed to humans that they've learned are untrustworthy. So again, we found that T-touch is an excellent way to provide connection and comfort, from the touches to the wraps and the body work. A certified T-touch practitioner can help teach you all of that. But what I'm going to do, we're going to have a short video here. This is one of the very, very basic ones. This is the T-touch half body wrap. We use this quite a bit with almost every dog. Some dogs will say they don't want it, other ones do. We always offer the dogs a choice. We have to have consent and communication. So to put on a T-touch body wrap, we are going to take just an ace bandage, fold it in half. We're going to put that halfway mark at the dog's chest. Bring up the ends, crisscross over the dog's shoulders, let it come down on the other side of the rib cage. Then we'll bring it up under the belly and tie it together off the spine. Very good girl, Essie. I mean, you can see she stood there, she wanted it, she was good for it. I also have some real world case studies for you guys. This one is kind of cool. So aside from, we've known back since 1997 with Hennessy and that crew, they found that shelter dogs exposed to just 15 minutes of human interaction had reduced stress behaviors and cortisol levels. What we have seen that's pretty remarkable at the facility, South Austin Dog Center, is how even breaking off in the moment can change a dog. I have two clips here for you. They were both, these are longer clips. They were both taken during the same session. We had an unexpected event that kind of terrified this dog. She typically has a little bit of trouble connecting anyways, but this one almost threw her over the edge. So let's go ahead and we'll watch the first one. You'll also get to see me do some real-time problem solving that looks rather embarrassing, but it happened. You can see we have a little bit of avoidance here. When I started putting the treat on the ground, she was more inclined to come and do some things. We were kind of just getting to a spot where she was working. And then this next thing happened. The fan turned on. She freaked out. I said, well, here, do you want treats? We can have a party. She said, no. So we run over. I try a scatter. She's not even looking at the treats. At this point, everything is out to kill her. I tried a few other things to see if they would work, and then resorted to what's typically unconventional in the dog training world. I noticed she was having problems. So we're going into our comfort. I asked her if she could do it again. I still wasn't getting things from her. So we sat down and went, all right, we're just going to stay here for a moment, relax. We really couldn't escape the situation. So I started doing some T-touch on her, relaxation. She is leaning into me. I'm not really holding her up, even though the camera angle looks weird for it. And I want to say this went on for like 4 minutes right there, just helping her to mentally recover from the tower fan going on. But after this, I asked her to start working again, and you can see what happens. If I remember right, she was not taking treats near as hard by this time as when she had after it first went on. Much more responsive. Still looking around a little bit, but much more responsive than she was at the start. All right, and if we're ready for the second clip, The fan kicks on again, and I want you to see what she does. Right there. We looked over at it, but we didn't have that tail tuck run away. Oh my God, I'm way too scared. And she was able to continue working and doing some things with me. So, and then we had people coming in and out of Howlin' Wolf Dog Daycare. A little bit more T-touch just because I figured she needed it at that time. But watch what she does next. I was really proud of her. You have to know the dog to know what a big deal that is, that she's actually doing it thoughtfully. Even with people approaching. I do want to mention that I'm putting the treats on the ground to really help relieve the pressure. She gets a little funny when you're bringing stuff straight at her, but putting it on the ground, she does a little bit of a sniff and tends to do a little bit better. All right, so we're back to this dog again. When comforting isn't our goal with offering comfort is to help build trust and safety, but that can be very counterproductive when we force it on the dog, or the dog shows avoidance signals that are ignored, or it's offering comfort and touch inadvertently increases the arousal and stress in the moment. So if our connection is fragile or misunderstood, it can become pressure instead of support. So I have the second part here with this dog that we saw earlier, still with the same stress signals. It's almost like she's fooling you to come closer, but watch what she does at the end of this particular clip. That is the correct response. She said that she needed space and actually took herself away from it. This is not something that the dog is known for, so that's kind of a pretty big deal. And since this video was taken, some of that has gotten quite a bit better. So our key takeaways is that comfort is a science-backed tool for healing from trauma. It helps regulate stress in the nervous system, fosters trust, and can help promote healing. It sets the stage just to help rebuilding trust. And it is most effective when we use sound judgment on when and how, again, asking, what does the dog need, not what do we think they need? So it does require you to kind of listen and watch and learn from the dog a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit here about how we build these islands of stability and what they are, so that we have these safe harbors for our dogs. These are more or less our practical tools. So here's the basic framework. It's an emotional healing. It's nonlinear and it's responsive to the dog's nervous system and history. And it tells you what the dog emotionally needs before or during intervention. And it can help you determine a behavior modification protocol if a behavior modification protocol is appropriate. It focuses on stability and capacity, not just the behavior outcomes. We're really looking that we can help the dog become more mentally stable, and it's highly adaptable. So we have our islands, which each represent the different emotional domains necessary to heal. The lighthouses are the guiding principles of each of those islands, what the dog needs in order to come safe onto that dry land. And our harbors they are the practical and emotion aligned tools and strategies for getting them there. Our bridges, even though this is nonlinear, our bridges are indicators that the dog is ready to explore other islands or other island clusters, because there is maybe just a itty bitty tiny hierarchy with it. So this is our landing cluster, the 3 islands that are foundational for emotional stabilization, and the first ones we want to help a dog reach. They give them that space to breathe. Our daily stability builders are going to be the island of safety, which our lighthouse is. I'm not in danger, I'm not hurt, I'm not sick. So our harbors are going to be to create safe spaces and a home base and respect their boundaries and thresholds, and to make sure that we have the medical needs attended to. So examples of this are going to be letting them observe scary things from a comfortable distance, starting to teach them a little bit of mat work so we have a mobile home base, making sure that they have some comfort items. Everybody needs a security blanket, and starting to work on consent-based touch. Slow is fast. You do not want to rush your safety and your connection islands. Your connection island is, we just talked a lot about that. It's that you, as the person, the dog feels that you are safe to be around because you're giving them consent, companionship, guidance, and attention. So good games to play with this one are going to be treat retreat, pattern games, and even an auto check-in depending on the level of where the dog is. And then our island of predictability. Dogs like to know what to expect. They thrive on routines, but we want to make sure that it's more of a rhythm rather than something rigid. So familiar and flexible rhythms with clear cues and boundaries, as opposed to we eat dinner every day at 8 p.m. Then you go on a 20-minute walk and we always do the same. Don't do that. So mix it up. We can have some pattern games within the walk if the dog is able to do walks. Obstacles, different types of obstacles. Your emotional regulation, you have to make sure that you're consistent. And regular meal times, and think of it more as time blocks than having it exactly where it needs to be. And next we have our rebuilding cluster. These are the ones that help grow our confidence and help the dog learn to be a little bit more flexible and emotionally elastic. So these ones support the dog's ability to recover, make choices, and to begin navigating challenges. Usually at the facility, we will spend, depending on the dog, because they get to do it, it has been anywhere from 3 days to 10 days just working on the connection and getting the dog to trust us enough to where we can work. So these are our capacity builders. The first island of regulation, that's the lighthouse, is that the dog is healthy in their excitement levels. They're not having huge spikes and dips. And in order to help them get there, we encourage relaxation. We respect their thresholds, encourage healthy play and social interactions, and teach them they can go away. They don't have to stay where you are. That was one of the biggest things that I think really helped Atlas, is he wanted the connection so bad. So he would come in and he would climb up on the bed where I was sitting with my old boy Maverick, and Atlas would like curl up all sorts of stiff and just growl. And I looked at him and I went, "You can go away." And he looked at me like, "I can what?" And I said, "You can leave." And so he just kind of slunk off the bed, looked back at me. He was expecting me to chase after or to yell at him or whatever. And I just went, "No, you can go. It's fine." So he went out the door, turned the corner, waited about 30 seconds, and then just kind of peeked back around. And you could almost see him processing, going, whoa, this has never happened in my life before. And this gave him that agency to go back and forth, back and forth. So, but for regulation, on-off games and natural decompression can help out. Since I already just kind of mentioned Atlas was a beautiful lead into agency, this is them understanding that they have real choices. It doesn't mean that we don't set boundaries, but it means the dog can decide when, how, and to engage. They can interact, they can retreat. We can give them simple daily choices. Do you want this chew or this chew? Do you want a bully stick or a fish skin? Making sure that they have enrichment opportunities, various things, and figuring out kind of what they like, and that the dog can opt out and say, nope, we're not doing that right now. It doesn't mean that it's not always, there's going to be times when they have to do things, but the things that don't matter, like your dog say no. If you say, hey, you want to go for a walk, and they look up at you from their bed and they're like, no, I mean, like, all right, cool, I'll see you in a bit. So examples of agency are shaping activities. Those ones are lots of fun. Sniff and nature walks, puzzle toys, and then of course Sarah Fisher's ACE free work. And that one also helps build positive associations. It lets the dog learn how to explore on their own. So our last island in our capacity builders is recovery. And this one is that the dog is able to return to their baseline after stress. We're going to have built-in rest days and times. That way the dog's not always going. They need a chance to process. So we need to have those decompression activities and practice ways to safely disengage and give them the space to rebound. So examples of this are going to be sniffing, chewing, licking, taking them on nature works. Once again, it's got to be something the dog likes. If they get hyped up going on a walk, find something else. A quiet day at home, or even offering comfort, doing some T-touch. And I have another video here. This one's kind of cute. This is a puppy. It was his first time to the park. He stood in my car for a few moments and went, what is happening? Came out and just almost instantly overwhelmed. He was like, I don't think that I can do this. So I left my car door open and watched the decisions that he makes. It wasn't even that busy that day. It was just a lot. That was a very smart decision on his behalf. He went back to some place where he really felt safer. And I let him do this several times. And what happened was that he would start coming out more and more and spend longer and longer. Those were dogs passing, and that was the wind blowing. That is a very good choice on his behalf. And ate it a little bit fast. I want to say that he had already been in and out of the car like 5 times. And when the another dog that we had coming came, he decided to go back into the car on his own again. So our last island is resilience. It's not a place that we can chart toward directly. It reveals itself when the conditions are right for growth. So we need to have these other islands mostly stable in order for resilience to start building. And that's going to look different for every dog. It might be them choosing to disengage and go put themselves in bed because there's too much going on. But this is the point when healing happens. It's rather fragile at first, so we want to make sure that we protect it and respect the dog's decisions when they do it. And this is just one that it's not something we teach directly. So it's beyond the anchors, which are everything that we're trying to teach the dog to do. It's something that they develop when they're supported. And for some dogs, resilience is Avalon. You aren't sure it existed until you saw it. So what are your dog's next steps? Well, notice when your dog asks for space or support. Create consistent but adaptable routines that offer some predictability. Offer agency and choice, even in small amounts at first, and watch out for those stress signals. Make sure that you have built-in recovery days. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present and supportive and adapt to what your dog is telling you. There are days that we'll come in and we'll be like, all right, we're going to work on this with the dog. And the dog says, nope, we're working on this. And we go, okay, that's fine. Like I said, love alone, not enough. So when to seek professional help is going to be when your dog is not making progress or they're getting worse. They're shutting it down. Over arousal or unpredictability remains high. Or you're unsure, you're stuck and you need help, you need a plan. Different types of help are going to be professional certified behavior consultants or trainers who are familiar with trauma. And then, of course, we work with behavior veterinarians because sometimes the chasm is so deep, they need the help. So let me ask you, which island does your dog need help landing on first? Because you're not alone. I'm gonna help get them stable. And small wins lead to big progress. All right, thank you for joining us. That is the presentation. I believe we have some time for Q&A, so stick around.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That presentation was so wonderful. If anybody has any questions, feel free to come off mute or pop those into the chat box now.
I'm going to leave this slide up for a few minutes.
Anybody with any questions? There's time
Still
to just,
processing.
yeah, it's a lot of information.
It is a lot.
Oh,
You're welcome.
well, if we don't have any questions, thank you guys again so much for your time today. We'll send a recording out after this to everybody who has either contacted us or emailed us. Please join us for our next webinars. You can see our next webinars at everydogaustin.org/webinars, and you can make a donation at everydogaustin.org/donate. Thank you guys so much for being here with us today and all of that wonderful information. It was an awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I am kind of developing the Islands of Stability a little bit more. I have run the model. It's basically our decision-making process, but I have run the model through AI and it has come up with almost exactly the plan that Eric and I typically do on any given day, which is impressive.
How neat. Yeah, beautiful framework, really awesome, very easy to understand for everybody. Well, thank you guys so much. We appreciate your time today. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.
Thank you.